What's up, everyone? I thought I would do a video that's advice for young musicians or older, but anyone who's just starting out and you're either a solo artist or you're a band and you are about to do your first release and you want to really go for it. You're in that spirit of going for it seriously. I get these, I get emails and messages. People are shopping around for labels, young musicians. They want to know what's up with PR, what's a good idea, self-releasing stuff. So basically I wanted to do four topics. Basically, there's recording, labels, self-releasing tips, and PR, public relations. So yes, sometimes when people write to me, they've already recorded their first record or EP or something, and they want to know what to do with it. This advice right here is if you have not yet recorded, but you're ready to record. Number one thing, do not spend too much money. That might seem obvious because you're like, I'm not independently wealthy. Why would I spend too much money? But I mean, whatever amount of money you think you should spend to do like a really hooked up pro recording to knock them dead, spend less than that. One reason is, and people don't really think about this, is like if you come right out the gate with this $9 billion recording that you got someone who recorded all your favorite bands, higher level. You're like, whoa, we're in the studio, and you spent your life savings, you maxed out your credit card to do this. Then you've got this pristine first record, and then it's like the following things you have to kind of maintain that, because it's going to be weird if you go back to some kind of scrappy DIY sounding thing for your subsequent releases. So you want to get some kind of way of producing the recordings that is sustainable, that like you could do another one and another one and another one, so I would say if you are a lo-fi ish kind of artist, some kind of bedroom pop or spacey psyche weirdo thing, or nasty grimy kind of punky stuff, I would say lean into that lo-fi-ness and do something super lo-fi. If you're kind of band or artist that really is like meant to be kind of more hi-fi, you want the big hooked up production, you can go mid-fi and kind of cut a bunch of corners. Just go to, if you're in your small town, just go with the person who records all the shitty punk bands. Not that you're in a shitty punk band, but the person who just records all the bands in your little scene or whatever. Don't reach for something. And investing in good mics. See, we're talking about what's worth investing money in. What's worth, what's worth losing money short term that is going to be an investment for your career and your band. Getting a good mic is not as expensive as you think. The mic that I'm speaking into right now is an AT4050, AT4050 Audio Technica. It's about $600, which might sound like a lot, but the thing is, you might spend $600 just getting decent vocal takes in the fancy studio. This is high quality enough. I mean, you could do totally professional work with this mic. Not just for vocals, but for recording acoustic instruments and stuff. It's a great mic. Also, you can borrow SM58s and SM57s from all your friends. Have them. You can borrow them from them. You can even mic drums in your rehearsal space. Really piece together some cobbled together thing. Yeah. Recording, hi-fi recording is not something to pump money into off the bat. Next topic is labels. A couple of people starting out write to me like, do I even need a label? How important is a label? Well, nowadays, I mean, you need a label less than ever as far as need. I mean, the barrier to entry, you just put stuff on Bandcamp, you're in the game, you're selling music. So you don't need a label. However, labels still do matter a lot as far as getting your stuff around in people's ears. However, they only matter after, like, at a certain level. Like, a certain level of label hooks you up, but then beneath that, it's like you may as well self-release. In any case, the first thing is that if you're shopping around stuff to labels, you should shop around a full record. Shop around a full album that you want them to release. Don't send them a rehearsal tape or a demo. No one's going to, even if it's amazing, no one's going to respond to that. And even an EP, if some label, you hit them up cold and they're just like, they're probably not going to put out an EP for you. EPs usually, that's like the follow-up to the record or something in between records, if your record does well, they want you to do an EP, to follow up. But yeah, send them a full album. As far as actually hitting up the label, I mean, the best thing obviously is not to hit them up cold. If you have some kind of in at the label, some friend is willing to pass it along to the people there, clearly that's preferable. But assuming that you're just like hitting them up cold, it's what you want to do is just keep it really simple. Don't attach files. You want to attach, don't attach anything. Do a link, private link to the record. Keep the email really short, talking like 4 sentences, 5 sentences. Don't give your band bio except in a couple sentence, synopsis. You can have your band bio or whatever like attached or link to it, but yeah, don't waste their time. Just give them something to click right on. So the next piece of advice is for your phase of hitting up labels with your release. Don't beat your head against the wall too hard. I think there's only so much energy that anyone has. It's draining to do this stuff. You only have so much time. You only have so much time before you get sick of the record and you want to move on to the next thing. So don't spend months hitting up labels hoping that something's going to work out. Do one sweep of hitting up all the possible labels. Like take a week to just compile every possible label that could possibly be a good idea. And then just blast out emails, with links to all of these labels all at once. Just get it done. Massive sweep. Wait 3 or 4 days if you don't hear back. One follow-up. Did you get the thing? Just wanted to check in, make sure it didn't fall through the cracks. If you don't get a response, then it's over. No more hitting up, okay? Just put a cap on it. When it comes to who you're going to hit up, which labels, I think of labels in being kind of like 3 tiers. I mean, this isn't official, but it's kind of how I conceive of it. There's like the top tier. This is indie labels. We're assuming this Columbia or something. It's like not even on the map. I'm talking about, indie labels. The top tier is labels where most of the artists do not have day jobs, or at the very least, they don't have day jobs while they're on the label. I mean, it's the kind of label where if you get signed, you can quit your job to do an album cycle of touring and whatnot. So labels on that level would be like, if you're in the indie world, that would be like Thrill Jockey, 4AD, Domino, labels like that. Warp, for a more electronic thing. If you're talking about metal, I guess that would be like Relapse. I guess maybe Southern Lord and Death Wish maybe would be on that tip. I don't know, Metal Blade, I guess. Yeah. So then you've got, okay, those labels are probably not going to just sign some new band. I'm figuring that your band or you as a solo artist you have like maybe 700 Facebook likes. Like it's like under 1,000. Like you're really putting out your first stuff. And you haven't toured is what I'm kind of figuring, or barely at all. So yeah, those first tier bands, labels are not going to, but it's worth sending it to them. It's worth a try just in the weird off chance, but don't hold your breath. The next level down are like the labels that most of the artists probably do have day jobs, and these are the kind of labels that they don't have like an in-house booking person necessarily, probably not. They don't have they maybe have an in-house PR person, but not necessarily, but they'll hire PR for you, but it's not like some whole part of some system. They don't have like management connected with their thing, so a label, but they have some kind of clout or like name recognition, and it's like a cool look to be on them, so that would be in the indie world, I guess like Don Giovanni would be an example of that. Or in the metal realm, you'd be talking about Profound Lore, who I've worked with. You'd be talking about like $20 Spin, Prosthetic. Yeah, those those kind of labels. They're cool to be on. You definitely want to be on a label like that for sure. I mean, you'll still be a barista, but it's good to do that. So yeah, you want to send most of your emails and cold calls to that level. And then there's the lowest level, which are kind of labels that are basically at your same level. You've got like under 1,000 Facebook likes, as an example of a metric, and so they're like on your level. So that's kind of like that'd be like a lateral collaboration. A label like that, it's cool to work with. You might want to say yes to a label like that, but don't bother hitting them up because there's just billions of those kind of labels. And if you're just like sniffing around trying to find some like microscopic little label to work with, I wouldn't waste time combing through that with actually approaching them, But if someone approaches you, consider it. We'll talk about that in a sec. Don't be desperate. This is more of a general vague thing, and this really more like applies to if you get offers from that lowest level where the label's not really much bigger than you are as an act or as a band. By don't be desperate, I just mean really take a serious look at what they're really going to do for you and what they're not really going to do for you. If some tiny label wants to put out vinyl or CDs, yeah, you probably should say yeah, because that's like an investment, on their part. If they're going to pay for recording, if they're going to reimburse you for the money that you spent on recording, that's good. If they're going to hire PR, that's a reason to work with a label. But see, there are all these still like these tiny little labels that they aren't going to reimburse you for recording or anything. They aren't hiring a publicist. And maybe they're only just going to like manufacture tapes or something like that. If that's the case, you might want to just say no, simply because self-releasing can actually be kind of a cooler look than working with like a tiny label that doesn't have much more clout than you, because it just makes you look like the self-contained thing waiting to be helped out. When you work with a label, you put yourself under their umbrella, under their aesthetic vibe umbrella. You affiliate yourself with them. So if you're on that like top tier thrill jockey-ish kind of level, yeah, you want to be affiliated no matter what. If you're on that mid level, the $20 spin sort of, Don Giovanni level, yeah, you want to be under that umbrella. Tiny stuff that's lateral for you, maybe you want to be affiliated. Maybe you just keep your own thing with the self-release. Self-releasing. If you've never put out anything before, any album, EP, or even singles, you probably are going to end up self-releasing it. I mean, unless you're like way up in the industry or scene, or, you're some like super hot like e-thought with like, 50K followers. I mean, but if you're just like some musician or band with 700 Facebook likes, be prepared to self-release your first thing and do it in style. Okay, first of all, I mean, some of this might be obvious to a lot of you. I mean, Bandcamp is your friend. iTunes, yeah, I guess. Spotify, that's just way up in the air, man. That's unclear whether that's even good or not. I'm kind of ready to kick Spotify to the curb. But if you want to get your stuff on Spotify and iTunes and stuff like that, I use TuneCore when I self-release stuff. TuneCore is a service where they distribute your stuff in those channels, and they take a tiny little cut. Or not a cut, it's like you you just like pay for the service. I can't remember. It's not a lot of money, but But Bandcamp, you just put it up there and it's there. So, Bandcamp's your friend. Okay, something to consider is don't make an album. Just make an EP or singles first. Now, see, this sounds like it goes against my whole thing. I said when you're trying to shop around to labels, you need to be shopping around a full record, full album. That's true. However, if you're going to self-release, it's probably a way better idea to just do singles. And that used to be more just a thing that like aspiring pop artists did, or rap artists or whatever. But this is way more of a thing for indie type musicians, guitar based artists, weirdo electronic people. Metal. See, this is the thing. Metal bands don't do this as much. I think metal bands should, honestly. Yeah, do singles, or do an EP. If you've already recorded if you've already recorded like a full length that you've been shopping around to labels and you got no takers for it, you can break it up into like 2 EPs or into just singles, or you could release the whole album just as singles. The reason why this is good to do is because it just sort of maximizes engagement. You keep trickling out material. I hate saying content; it's so dark, but material, music, and you keep having reasons to hype your stuff up. So it's this continuous stream of reminding people what of telling people about the music and getting them to buy it. Whereas an album is really, that's more for when you're on a label and then there's this big build up and this big drama like leading up to this album cycle. So yeah, self-release, I would say do Bandcamp and do smaller, more consistent releases. Now, when I say do smaller releases, what do I mean? Just digital? Yeah, just digital is cool, but the thing is, I would do tapes. Self-release tapes. I mean, if you want to really risk some money, you can press some vinyl, or even do CDs. But if you're starting out, you're at that under 1,000 likes on Facebook. I don't know why I use that as the metric. It just seems to represent something. If that's where you're at, the vinyl, that's only going to really sell if you're like going on huge, crazy DIY tours, looping the country for months and months on some crazy, like, Black Flag era fantasy or whatever that you're doing. Then maybe you will eventually, you'll sell out the LPs, like, soon enough that it's worth doing. But if you do tapes, tapes are so cheap and people actually buy those, because the thing is, people don't really need to buy any of this, I mean, people can listen to it on Spotify. If you don't have it on Spotify, people just listen to the singles on Bandcamp or whatever. And so yeah, so buying physical media is just a fetish. That's just a weird fetish object anyway. So the fact that it's a tape actually makes it like cooler for a lot of people, and they're so cheap to make, and you can make them look, super cool, very personal. So that's something to do physical media wise when you self-release. I would say, other than cassettes, before you even manufacture LPs or CDs, I would do shirts next. Physical merch like that. People, I mean, it seems like it, I guess depending on what kind of music you're doing, but I mean, if you're a brand new metal band, let's say, or experimental weirdo artist, and you're you're going out and playing shows, and at the merch table you've got like 3 cassette singles that all look cool and have a consistent visual aesthetic, and then like a cool t-shirt with the same visual aesthetic, and you kill it live, that's a good look at the merch table. That's not like, oh, weird, you like self-release, like that's kind of lame. It's like, no, that's dignified. Like, that's a dignified thing. And I mean, that is the kind of thing, I think, labels, they see your cassette is sold out. That's kind of a better look than like you pressed a million vinyl copies and you lost a lot of money. So these are ways to be selling something where you're not dropping weird amounts of money that are damaging. Okay, now this is just a general thing for your, starting out as a musical artist in general, but relates to the self-release thing and just the whole DIY aspect of it, is just tour. I mean, just doing shows out of your town. Now, obviously, we're in the midst of COVID now, so this is completely not applicable to right now, but COVID will end and things will return. And actually, the bigger venues are the ones, or the mid-sized kind of venues are the ones that are probably going to be going out of business and screwed. As far as super DIY spaces, those spaces might be more resilient as far as, like not getting closed. So yeah, when we come out of this COVID thing, that might be pretty happening. Playing a show, playing a show for 30 people is probably better PR than like getting a write up in some blog or something that's just like, oh, check out the new track by so and so. I mean, seriously, I mean, more than 30 people will click on that link to check your track out, but they'll just listen to half of it and be like, oh, this sounds cool, whatever. But I mean, 30 people going out to see you play, even if it's in, or maybe even especially if it's in some tiny ass town, smaller than Indianapolis, maybe some like quote unquote shit town, which no town is a shit town. But I'm saying, you play some tiny little place, I mean, those kids will talk, they will talk, and they'll be your PR. So yeah, don't forget about that. PR, public relations. It's funny, I just watched that movie by Adam Curtis called The Century of Self. It's all about the history of PR companies and advertising working together with psychiatrists and the government, like in the early 20th century. And I mean, it gets into some conspiratorial, it gets into like MK Ultra territory. It's creepy, but it's part of life. But okay, PR. Well, should PR be part of life? Hiring a publicist. This is one of these big questions. It's so hard to say. A publicist can make you soar, or it can make you soar, SORE. Either way, a publicist could make you fly, or they could just take your money and screw you. Now, if you're on a actual like more legit label, they will pay for PR and it's fine. Just go with them. But if you're self-releasing, it's really unclear. I mean, I would, one rule is don't hire a publicist for an EP. Just don't do that. It's very hard to get press for EPs, even if you're quite a bit bigger. Only do that if you're doing a full-length album. So as far as the advice I gave you, I basically said only if you're going to self-release, don't put out a full length, put out EPs and singles. So in other words, that means don't hire PR for that. If you are going to hire PR, like if you're going to self-release a full length, then yes, maybe hiring a publicist is a good idea. Here's a piece of wisdom for that. Only hire a publicist if they clearly, sincerely like what you're doing. Sometimes it's hard to tell, I suppose, but I would only shell out money if the person's like, oh, and this is really, really cool. Like, this is, yeah. I bet so-and-so will like this. Still, there's no guarantee that you're going to get a bunch of press. But I mean, they're going to try, because publicists, they're not a machine. They don't just like plug you in and then results happen. They have to hit people up. And they have to be like, oh, this is it, man. Check this record out. So yes, get a publicist who's on your team and likes what you're doing. So as for self-releasing and not having a publicist, how do you get press then? You can try to track down writers yourself. You won't be able to get press, by just hitting up info at Pitchfork or whatever. I mean, that's not a thing, obviously. But if you can track down, if you look at small blogs or whatever, or writers who maybe they write for their own small little blog or site, but then they also freelance for some bigger outlets, you can see if any of them have covered friends of yours or artists that are maybe at your level or a little bigger, and try to track them down. I mean, it's not really kosher to be hitting up writers in like their Twitter DMs or whatever, but if they're not too high profile, they might have their info available. And you'd be surprised with that you can, if you hit up a bunch of these writers that have just done tiny little things, that stuff can kind of add up. you know, and at least maybe you can get some pull quotes from them being like, this is amazing. So, you know, you can use that, I suppose, in the future. So yeah, also remember that press really does not just directly add to record sales. You know, I've um I've had releases. Some of the releases that I've done with my projects, some of the releases that sold more, they're releases where I didn't get a whole lot of press for the record, and it sold a lot better than other releases where I managed to pull some great press. Okay, so this is just a little handful of advice there. You know, do with it what you want. Um, and yeah, like I said, this only really applies to artists who are just starting out. I'm saying under 1,000 likes. And really only in these specific genres. If you're a techno artist, well, you probably already stopped listening because you have your own, that you know, music that comes out of the club realm is like its own kind of thing. You know, it's like not Bandcamp, it's more SoundCloud. You're doing like mixtapes and stuff like that. And yeah, and rap, you know, it's somewhat something of a different game. But you know, you see the kind of realms that I'm in: experimental, post-punk, weirdo stuff. And this will at least get you started. And you know, like I said, with the shopping around and with any aspect of this, don't, not only should you not stress too much, but put a cap on how much work you put into the business aspect. Because music is music. I mean, if you're anything like me, I hate I hate hustling. Even when it's going well, even when I'm getting the calls back and people are on my nuts, I still really am not that into it. I like making the music, and you want to get back to that. Because ultimately, you know, you're bringing something to the table. In general, you got to remember this, just on the topic of keep your head up. Um, they need you more than you need them. I mean, that seems weird because, you know, like, wait a minute, Warp Records doesn't need me. I need Warp Records. They're huge, and I don't even have 1,000 Facebook likes. But so that might not make sense. But in general, record labels, press, publicists in general, they need musicians in general more than the other way around. Okay, so just remember that. And, you know, just like I said, don't be desperate with your psychology. Go into this entire affair thinking of yourself as having something that you're going to bring to the world. Don't think about it as that people have something you need and you need something and you have this like poverty mentality of like thirst and hunger. Yeah, see what happens. And you know, the other thing is, like, if you, there are a billion ways of getting your career going that I can't even think of, because the game is so open now with just online culture the past 5-10 years. I mean, yeah, if you just have some Instagram that's popping off for some, if you have like a meme page, you're killing it as a memer, you know, you might be able to just ride off that and get just a huge record deal off of that, you know. So these are things to consider if you have other hustles. But if you're just straight music, just a straight musician trying to go the straight and narrow path, you know, take what I say with some grain of salt, but check it out. All right, good luck.